There's a moment, caught on camera in a quiet research lab, where a chimpanzee looks into a mirror and touches a spot of red paint on its own forehead. The scientist watching freezes, because in that tiny gesture, something enormous is revealed. We like to think humans stand apart, that we alone have self-awareness, emotion, choice. But in the next few minutes, you'll see how one simple, almost playful experiment shattered that comforting idea and opened the door to a deeper truth about the minds around us. A truth that makes every animal encounter, from your dog staring at you to the birds outside your window, feel strangely more personal. Today, we're exploring an experiment that changed how scientists think about animals and how we see ourselves. It's called the mirror self-recognition test. By the time we reach the end, you'll understand why this tiny test shook psychology, challenged philosophy, and even sparked debates about animal rights. But to feel the weight of it, we have to go back to the day a bottle of red paint met a mirror and everything we believed about intelligence wobbled. The story begins in the 1970s with psychologist Gordon Gallup Jr. He was fascinated by a question most people never ask out loud. Does an animal know it's alive? Researchers had studied animal behavior for centuries. But self-awareness, that quiet voice in your mind that says, "That's me," was still considered uniquely human. Many people assumed animals were more like biological machines, reacting, obeying instinct, not really understanding anything. Gallup didn't buy it. So he designed an experiment so simple it felt almost silly. He placed chimpanzees in a room with a large mirror. At first, the chimps treated their reflection like a stranger. They threatened it, touched the glass, even tried to play with the other chimp. But then something shifted. Slowly, they began making faces. They pulled at their lips. They inspected their teeth. They moved their hands in ways that only made sense if they knew they were looking at themselves. Gallup needed proof. So while the chimps slept, he did something clever. He placed a bright, unnatural mark on their foreheads, a color they'd never see on their own fur, and waited. When the chimps woke up and saw their reflection, they stared. Then one by one, they reached up and touched the mark. Not the mirror, the mark on their own head. At that moment, the room went quiet. Because the chimps had answered a question humans rarely dare to ask. They knew who they were. If you've ever seen a baby try to wipe peanut butter off the other baby in a mirror, you know humans don't start life with this ability either. It takes us about 18 months to recognize ourselves. So when a chimp passes the test, it feels like the barrier between us and them shrinks, almost uncomfortably. And that wasn't the only surprise. Over the years, other animals passed: dolphins, elephants, magpies, even some fish. Meanwhile, animals we often consider smart, like dogs, didn't pass at all. Which didn't mean dogs weren't intelligent, just that the test wasn't built for the way they perceive the world. Suddenly, the experiment wasn't just about animals. It was a mirror held up to our own assumptions. The mirror test forced scientists to ask a deeper question. What does it mean to be aware of yourself? It's not just recognizing your reflection. It's understanding that your body is yours, that your actions come from your intentions, that you exist separate from the world. Self-awareness is tied to empathy, planning, morality, things we thought were exclusive to humans. But now, with animals passing the test, the definition of personhood began to bend. Philosophers argued. Biologists debated. Ethicists asked whether passing the mirror test should grant an animal new rights. And it all hinged on a drop of paint and a mirror. But here's the twist. Some researchers began noticing something even more surprising than animals recognizing themselves. Certain animals ignored the mirror, not because they lacked intelligence, but because they didn't care. Octopuses, for example, interact with the world through touch and texture. Dogs understand who they are through smell, not vision. Asking them to use a mirror is like asking a human to identify themselves by taste. So the realization hit. The mirror test wasn't revealing the limits of animals. It was revealing the limits of us, of our imagination, our assumptions, our human-centered way of measuring minds. What started as a test for animals became a lesson in humility. Animals weren't less intelligent. They were intelligent in ways we hadn't learned to see yet. So what does all of this mean for us today? Every time you see your cat hesitate at its reflection, or your dog tilt its head at your emotions, you're looking at a mind that doesn't work like yours, but isn't lesser. The mirror test taught us something profound. Consciousness isn't a single ladder with humans at the top. It's a landscape, wide, varied, and still mostly unexplored. And maybe the most human thing we can do is admit that humanity isn't ours alone. Because once you recognize that, even for a second, the world around you feels different, more alive, more aware, more connected. And that tiny moment, that touch of a painted mark, becomes less about a chimp in a lab and more about us discovering who we are. So what do you think? Are animals really more like us than we've ever imagined? Which species do you wish we could understand better, and why? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your ideas. And if this glimpse into the hidden world of animal minds sparked your curiosity, make sure to hit like and subscribe for more stories that make you see the world in a whole new way.